Yes, language, communication, and culture. We are not just going to discuss culture itself because that is not in my subject. Welcome nga pala sa aking cafe. Mas maganda sa ano no, sa Gmeet. Sa Zoom kasi ay kailangan mo pa ng ano, ng green screen para lang maging maayos yung lapat. Sa Gmeet hindi na. Okay, so I am not going to repeat my mistake the last time, and I am going to share to you the screen for our ease. And as I said, meron naman tayo sa mga dead air dahil naglo-load. Ayan, buti hindi ka nag-load ng matagal. So, we are going to discuss intercultural and global communication. At ayaw naman niya mag-present. In this one, we are talking about communication when it comes to two or more cultures. It does not concern with communication with your own culture. Ano ba yan? Unresponsive pa. It does not concern people from the same culture because first, we do not even think about it, right? We are from the same culture, so we are not going to question if what we are saying is correct or incorrect. No one is going to ask if using po and opo is okay if you are a native Tagalog. I said Tagalog because it's a Tagalog thing. Ang mga Bisaya ata ay hindi gumagamit ng po and opo. But of course, even though they don't use po and opo, it does not mean that they do not show respect to people whose respect is due. Ayun. Nag-confirm si Ian. Visayan people do not use po and opo. Ayun. Whereas Tagalog use po and opo on a regular basis. Na nag-evolve na nga siya. Before, you just use po and opo for the elderlies or the people older than you. Ayun. However, now we use them to indicate distance. I do not know if we are going to discuss that later. Or para nasa ano yun, Gen Ed 11 dun sa ano, sa proxemics ata, yung distance as carrier of meanings. Today we use po and opo to indicate respect for the elderlies, right? Ho and oho for the less formal, but for people of the same age, we also use po and opo di ba? Even to your classmates whom you are not close with. However, the point is you do not even question that. You do not even ask why or where, or you do not even think about using that. You just unconsciously use po and opo, di ba? Sana hindi maka-bother yung ulan sa klase natin. Well, let's start. The objective is we are going to define what culture is, identify different dimensions of culture. Basically, we just have two. But it gets complicated from there. Kala nyo madali kasi dalawa lang. Hindi, doon manggagaling lahat. Number 3 is it explains how dimensions of cultures affect communication situation. Number 4 applies practical use of these dimensions in improving quality of communication, especially with people from a totally different culture. Number 5, it identifies ways and guidelines in communicating with people from different cultures. The keyword in here is communication between two or more cultures. Number 6, it identifies the barrier in intercultural communication. Since we are going to be talking with people from different culture, chances are barriers will be presented. Ayun. We are going to discuss things as it comes. First one is what is culture, of course, right? We usually think of culture or society as basically geographical or ethnical, meaning we assign cultural identities to the places. Mostly, this is a Western thing. It's usually an American and European thing. Sa kanila kasi madalas nanggagaling yung mga political ideas na yan na natatanggap din natin. Ayun. Uh, for their convenience, they divided culture into the Eastern one, which is basically Asia, and Western, which is them. Ang dali lang, di ba? Oh, you're from the Eastern culture? If they say that, they are not going to think about it any further. They just know that you are from the East. Or Southeast, for that matter. We are from the Southeast. Diba pa yung if you're going to notice, the Eastern Asia is somewhat different from the Southeast Asia. Culture does not create different communications, but different communications create culture. Ayun. So, always remember this. The culture will not create communication. Who creates it? People. You need people in a place to start communication, right? You do not need a place to have culture. You need people to occupy a place to have culture. Why? People are going to start communicating with each other. And if they start doing that, they are going to have this way of talking with another people, right? You're going to have a way of talking with another person. Why? Because you are talking with another person. And you are going to follow different rules regarding that. Ayun. So, remember this. Communication creates culture, not the other way around. People do communication, communicate, thus, communication will create culture for those people. Ganun lang yun. Culture equals, culture, baliktad pala. Communication creates culture. Ayun. Culture, therefore, in relation to communication, cannot be viewed as something represented by a particular group of people from a specific region or location. Ayon yung sinasabi. So, we are going to look at this. Most of the mistakes that is done when looking at culture is you assign a set of culture to a place. If we say Saudi Arabia, then you are going to think of people that allow, you are going to think of a place that allow people or allows people to practice polygamy o yung mag-asawa ng marami, diba? Which is actually incorrect. If you are going to say that the location dictates culture, no. Ito kasi yung madaling isipin, diba? You are going to say Philippines is on the map. So Philippines has its own culture, which is incorrect. Japan is on the map. So Japan has its own culture, which is exclusively in Japan. It's wrong. Wala, bakit sir? We are led to believe in that way. We are going to discuss why. Ayun po. Hindi porket that is the place, that is the culture. No. Doing or speaking different cultures can happen even within the same nation. That's what we are talking about. To say that Japan has its own culture in and of itself, which is inside Japan, is wrong. First and foremost, even though it's Philippines na lang even though it's the Philippines, we still have a lot of cultures in here, right? You have the student culture, we have the teacher's culture, We also have the LGBT community's culture. We also have the musicians' culture. And those cultures exist in one location. So to say that this one location only has one culture is incorrect. So again, to say that a location is an indicator of culture is incorrect. Ayun po. Doing or speaking different culture can happen even within the same nation. Different cultures from the same nation. It's like what I said earlier, right? The Visayan people do not use po and opo, no matter where they are in the Philippines. Even though they are in Cavite, right? Let us say that you are Visayan and you live in Cavite. Your parents are Visayan, so naturally you are going to talk in Visaya in your home. If that is so, at one point you are not going to use Tagalog. Parang kakaiba na yun, di ba? Visaya na nga to, tatagalogin ko pa. So you are not going to use po and opo in that manner. You are carrying the Visayan culture even though you are in Cavite, which is predominantly Tagalog. Ayan. Kahit Tagalog pa yung pamilya mo, tapos pumunta ka ng Bisaya, sa Visayan region, you're still going to use Tagalog in one way or another because at home, you speak Tagalog. Cultures are created through communication, which is the same as the other one. Iniba lang yung placement. Culture creates communication. Communication is created by culture. If you still remember your passive and active voices, without culture, Without communication, there is no culture. Ayun po. Communication shapes cultures, and culture shapes communication. Hala sir, sinabi nyo kanina, it's not the case. Well, look at this. We need communication to shape culture, right? Also, we need culture to shape how we communicate with each other. Pero sir, sabi nyo, okay, if anyone is confused, look at this. Communication creates culture. What is the verb that is used? Create. Iba po ang create sa shape. Ayun. Let us say that shaping a clay is different from creating clay. Ayun. So remember, without communication, there is no culture. But also, culture helps us to communicate. You are a Visayan person, Waray, ano pa ba? Ilonggo? Hindi. Ilonggo, Bisaya din, ano. Ilocano, and you came to the Tagalog region. Of course, the way that you talk is going to be adjusted to the place that you go into. Ayun. So, the culture in there will shape the way you communicate. You do not use po and opo. You are going to be forced, for the lack of a better term, to use po and opo even though you are Visayan. Ayan, sana nagigets yun. Just remember ha, wag malilito. The first slide says create, whereas this slide says shapes. Two different verbs. Ayun, naririnig yung mga bata, pamangkin ko yung mga yon. Yes. I don't know. For myself, it's better to have niece and nephews than your own kids. Kasi ang mga pamangkin, anak mo sila, pero pwede mo silang isauli. Yung may mga pamangkin dito makaka-relate. Dogs and cats. Yes, dogs and cats. Please, huwag kayong mananakit ng mga hayop ha. Kung halimbawa na ayaw na sa pusa, huwag nyo batuhin. Hayaan nyo sila. Kung ayaw na sa aso, di tumakbo na lang kayo. Pagka kinagat kayo, di habulin nyo yung may-ari. Okay, we think of culture as something that other people have. We think of culture as something that other people have. Of course, you are Tagalog, I am Tagalog. You are not other people, if you understand what I mean. Hindi ka iba, Tagalog ka eh. Tagalog din ako. Bisaya ka, Tagalog ako, eh di pareho tayong Pilipino. Right? We do not practice alienation in that way. We just do that with other races. The racism in the Philippines is discreet, hindi siya halata. Unlike in other places na talagang babatuhin ka, papalabasin ka ng establishment, especially what is happening in the Western world. But in the Philippines, it's discreet. Medyo tahimik yung racism natin. But we're still racist. Sana mawala yung ganun. We think of them as something that has a different clothes. They have weird food. They have weird customs. Like, ay iba yung culture nito. Bakit kumakain siya ng noodles tapos hinihigop? They slurp their noodles, yung matunog na na paghigop ng soup nila. Yung mga ramens like what do you call this? Like China and Japan, they do that. And we find it strange. We find it weird. They wore kimono. Medyo sanay na tayo sa kimono dahil sa influence nila sa media natin eh. Some people wear turbans. They wear pang scapular din sa ulo. Other people. And we find it weird at some point because we do not do that. That is how we view culture as from our perspective. Ganun tayo. We do not say, they are from a different culture. We just think that they are weird for having those. You also have practices that those from another culture might regard as odd. Ayun. But you do not think about this because you think that this is normal, right? You think that this is normal, so chances are, sana naririnig pa ako sa ulan ha. Medyo maulan kasi eh. Dinig pa naman ako ano?
Yes po.
Yes po.
Okay.
Yes po.
Medyo may static lang talaga dahil sa ulan. You also have practices that other culture might think as weird. From our perspective, it's not. Nagmamano ka sa magulang mo? Wala kasing English word para sa pagmamano. You notice that? There is no English word for mano. Yung pagmamano natin, na walang English word para doon. Because we are the only ones who practice that. Wala rin tayong English word para sa tampo. Hanapan nyo. Why? Mamaya. So in that case, if a person from another culture sees you doing pagmamano, as I told you, walang English word para doon. Doing pagmamano to your elders, they're going to think that it is weird because they do not do that. Wala ring English word for po and opo, di ba? Wala rin. Yung exact ha, baka sabihin nyo yes. In a way, yes is different from opo. Contextually. Another thing is you eat balut. Sige, bahala na kayo sa balut. But other races would think that is disgusting and weird. Yung nga yung isang challenge sa mga foreigners dito, di ba? If you eat balut, then you are considered a Filipino already. E paano yun? Di ako kumakain ng balut. We also have this. The thing that we discussed earlier falls under ethnocentric bias. Ethno means ethnic. Centric means in the center. Why? Because we believe that our culture is the benchmark of all cultures. We think that our culture is right. We think that in our culture, adultery is a negative thing, right? In our culture, polygamy is negative. So if other people practice that, they are going to be shunned at. They are going to be hated for that. Sino yung huling nabalita? Si Paolo Contis ba? Yung nahuli daw na may ibang babae. Tingnan nyo yung social media. The social media would not shut up about it. Why? Because it is a reflection of our culture. Ayun. So that's one. Another thing is, so the point of this is we use our own culture as a vantage point to know if another culture is correct or incorrect. Ayun. So, if you use po and opo, and other people won't use that, sasabihin niyo, bakit kaya? Bakit hindi sila gumagamit ng po and opo? Ayun. Because you grew up thinking that your culture is correct. Well, at some point, it's morally correct. At another point, it may not be morally correct. But you tend to accept that because that is the culture. Next one is, let's start by looking at culture at a structure, as a structure, place, and national identity that identifies. Because that is the first thing that you do. You are Japanese, so we are going to think that you bow to greet people. You are Canadian, so you must be polite. Canadians daw ang pinaka-polite na tao sa buong mundo. Mamba-vandalize lang sila, nakalagay pa ay have a nice day. Ang paboritong word daw ng mga Canadians ay sorry, I'm sorry. Ganyan. Pag nabangga, sorry. Canadians are the, I do not know if this is correct, pero may nag-confirm na rin kasi Canadians are one of the most polite people on earth. Alongside with the Japanese. Ang mga Japanese talaga magagalang. Pinapatabi ka na, magalang pa. They always use keigo. Keigo is their formal language. Pag narinig nyo yung Japanese na gumamit ng kudasai, mas, ganun. Mas, kudasai, mga ganyan. It shows respect. So, pag sinabi nilang tabete kudasai, parang they are telling you, pakiusap, kumain ka na po. Ganun. In Filipino, it would work that way. Ayan. Australians also have their own culture. If you say, I'm Australian and I'm gay, if they say that, do not expect your same idea of gay to theirs. Ayun. Pag sinabi daw kasi nilang ganun, they are happy. But in America, it's different. It's homosexuality, ganyan. The Americans tend to use that because some Americans are homophobic. Some lang naman. Well, dito rin naman sa Pilipinas may mga homophobic people pero sana mawala na yun, di ba? But we use national identity to identify the cultures. That's where we start. But of course, we are not going to be done with that. Filipino nga, daming kultura This way of seeing culture focuses on the large-scale differences. Ayun, no? The Filipino people are different from the Japanese people. Large-scale. Between nation style of religion or beliefs. Ideas of national dreams and goals or preferred way of acting. The Filipinos like to be happy. And some foreigners also noted on that. The Japanese like to be quiet. The Finnish people also like to be quiet. In the Philippines, buses, way of acting yun in the Philippines, buses can be overflowing. It's filled to the brim. Nakatayo na yung iba. In Finland, two-seaters, pag may nakaupo ng isa at wala pa doon sa isa, they are going to be considered full. Gets nyo? Yung dalawang upuan noon. Pag naupuan na yung isa, tapos yung isa free, they are going to consider that as full. Why? Because Finland is one of the most introverted countries in the world. They value privacy. They value personal space, ganyan. So sa kanila, wag ka masyadong lalapit pag nakikipag-usap ka. Sa atin kasi, umaakbay na tayo minsan Especially the Americans. Americans are one of the most friendly people on earth. Cross-cultural communication generally compares the communication style and pattern of people from very different cultures. So in this one, we just compare two or more cultures. Like what I said earlier, if you're going to compare, we are going to say the Japanese are polite, the Filipinos are friendly. Friendly daw tayong mga tao. Especially in our houses, we are one of the most friendly people on earth when it comes to houses. Sa Japan, they are going to ask you to remove your shoes. In the Philippines, no, you are not going to do that. Ipasok mo na yan. Sige, lilinisin din naman yan. Right? But we are also one of the most violent when it comes to the road. Napaka-violente natin sa daan, sa totoo lang. Biglang nag-cut, biglang tatawid, makakarinig yung driver. Minsan, according to statistics, the Philippines has one of the highest crime rate when it comes to road rage. Ganon daw tayong mga Pilipino. Sa ibang bansa, especially in Canada, they're just going to ask, why? And then they're going to move on. Ganon silang ano sinasabi ko? Road rage, yes. Ayun. So, comparing two or more cultures falls under the cultural communication. Comparing lang to ha. Whereas in the intercultural communication, it deals with how people from cultural or social structures speak to one another. That's the key word. Speak to one another. And what difficulties or differences they have in the encounter over and above the different languages they speak. Let's go back. In this one, we have this. We just compare two or more cultures. But in this one, we are already having an interaction between another culture. You are already talking with a person from another culture. Ayun. And this is more prevalent today because of social media. If you can talk with an American, with at some point with a Japanese, with a Hispanic person. When I say Hispanic, the Spanish-speaking people, ayun. You can talk with them and compare your languages. One example is this. I had this conversation with a Spanish person. I was eating puto at one time. Puto, di ba? Pag sinabihan kitang puto, wala lang sa'yo eh. Halimbawa, sinabihan ko si Kyle. Kunwari lang to Kyle ha. Si Kyle, Kyle, pakakakamong puto. Kyle is going to think, bakit sir, cheesy ba ako? At saka sweet, ganun. Kaya mo ako sinabihan puto. Sige, tanggapin ko na. Ayun. But never ever say that to a Spanish person. I said, you know what? I love puto. And then the Spanish person said, what? What did you just say? It turns out that puto in their language is a curse. It came from the same root word as, sabihin ko na ha, as puta. So in that one, intercultural communication happens. In our culture, if you say puta to another person, you are inviting a fight. You are inviting a quarrel. But for them, yes. But if you say puto to another Filipino person, wala lang. Pagkain yun eh. Parang sinabihan ka, alam mo parang cupcake. Right? Then you are just going to be confused. Si sir, sinabihan akong cupcake. Bakit kaya? Nanlalandi siguro to. Diba? So, it falls under intercultural communication. Lumakas na yung ulan, may goodness. Dito na narinig ka sa sarili ko. So, in this one, we have, by the way, am I still being heard?
Yes po.
Malinaw pa
Yes po,
naman.
sir.
Ayan, sige. Sana nagigets yung mga paliwanag ko. Multicultures can exist in one society. Ayun no, sa number 1. In the Philippines, we have a lot of cultures. Let's go back to what I said. Location as an indicator of culture is incorrect. Always remember that. Because one location can have multiple cultures. We have a lot of cultures in the Philippines, if you notice that. We have the musicians, we have the blue-collar workers, the white-collar job workers, mga ganon. Still, different cultures exist. On number 2, multiple social communities coexist in a single society. Remember this. Number 1, multiple cultures can exist in one society. Also, they also coexist. When we say coexist, they help each other. They communicate with each other. Ayun na lang, ganon. For example, we have the bikers community. If they are a community, they also have their own culture. The truck drivers also have their community. If that is so, they are also revolving under one culture. However, here's another, also the mechanics have their own community, right? If that's so, they also have their own cultures. But the bikers and the mechanics, two different people having two different cultures will coexist. What if the driver does not know how to fix his bike, right? If that is the case, it's the mechanic's job to do that. So, two cultures will coexist. They are going to help each other. The vegan community, kahit sa Pilipinas meron din noon eh, di ba? The vegan community will not exist without another community. Malay mo, narinig sila ng producers community, di ba? Or people who produce, what do you call this? People who produce goods, like especially in the case of the vegans, they are going to produce organic fruits and vegetables. Ayun. Of course, the vegans cannot exist without the producers. Hindi naman pwede na photosynthesis lang, di ba? Ayun. Also, they may coexist or they may be in a competition with each other. I am a meat eater. And one time in Reddit, may nakausap ako doon tungkol doon sa post about sa isang pusa. Huwag kayong mag-alala, hindi naman kinain yung pusa. But it's still sad kasi sabi doon sa nakalagay doon sa title, i-euthanasia daw yung pusa dahil masama yung ugali. Can you imagine that? Euthanize a cat, mercy kill a cat because of the temperament. Hindi ko yata kaya yun. Sabi ko, anong klaseng, in English of course, pero Tagalogin ko na lang. Hindi ko maalala yung talagang sinabi ko. Anong klaseng amo yun? Napapatayin yung pusa kasi masungit yung, yung ugali. Di ba? And then may nag-reply sa akin at sabi, pumapatay nga kayo ng baka para kainin eh, mga ipokrito. And I was like, it's not even part of the context. If you're going to, if you're a vegan, it's okay, I don't mind. I know a lot of vegan people who pero yung isaksak mo yung paniniwala mo sa akin is totally different thing. Di ba? Ayun, I just mentioned that because it's part of the coexistence. There is a competition, there's also helping each community, there's also a friction between communities. Ganyan. Especially the yung iba na medyo, ang tawag nun, too enlightened to be in the vegan community, mga ganyan. So, if you are a vegan, it's okay, it's all well and good, it's also for you. Mas mababa ang chance ninyo na magkasakit sa puso at saka atakihin, mga ganyan. But, forcing it on other people and, what do you call this, attacking the morality is totally different thing. Ganun. Nayamot lang ako nung part na yun. It's part of the coexistence of two different communities. I am not ranting it for ranting's sake. Ganun po. You live your life in a context of a communication set of individuals who transact a universe of thoughts and behavior that makes possible certain ways of treating other people. Ang lalim, no? My goodness. But in this one, we say that an individual is a set of ideas. Ian is not Ian alone. He is a set of ideas. He is a set of beliefs, which is totally different from ano ano bang pangalan mo, Miss Kabungkal? Ayun na lang. Ibang-iba siya kay Kabungkal, and of course iba rin siya kay Kyle. Ganon. So if you interact with those people, you are interacting with a universe of ideas. So that you are also making possible different ways of treating people, right? You treat people differently because of the ideas that they have. It's we are just talking with one person, di ba? Me talking with Kyle, that conversation will spark a different ways of treating each other, and we are still from the same culture. But what if it's from a different culture, right? It's still going to produce different ways of interactions. Ayun po. So that's how beautiful transacting with a different culture is. Sa culture mo na nga lang may iba't iba ng klase ng communication, di ba? What if we are still going to talk with a person holding a different set of beliefs than our own? Ayun nga, yung nakakausap kong Spanish. Pagka sinasabi kong puto, nagugulat siya. Ayun. Pagka one thing is sinabi ko la mierda, kasi akala ko is it's going to mean the same thing. I said la mierda. For us it means gala, di ba, in Filipino. But for them, ang narinig lang niya yung mierda. Mierda is their way of saying shit. Ganun. From merd, which means poop. Ganun. Ano ba yung isa? Wag na, hindi ko na maalala yung isa. So if we say that, we actually come up with different ways of treating people too. That person does not want to hear the word puto, di ba? For us, it's okay. It's totally okay. Baka yung iba nagugutom na dyan kasi nakarinig ng puto. So for them, for that person, I am not going to use that anymore. So I'm going to treat him with respect and not use that anymore. Na-discover ko lang siya nung nanood ako nung nung nakakausap ko yun, yung Spanish person na yun. Your conformity with societies and cultures, belief, and practices is constantly and almost invisibly reinforced in daily talk that happens informally in the interaction with such agents as your friends, your family, your co-workers, or even strangers. The first thing that we have to look at this is the word conformity, which is another word for to follow. We follow society's beliefs, right? We follow culture. And if we are not able to follow that, we are going to be reinforced to follow that, right? When we were a kid, or when we were kids, if we forgot to use po and opo, our parents will remind us to use those, right? But it's almost invisibly reinforced. It's invisibly placed in us. And we follow that every day. You do not notice that. Diba? You do not notice following. You do not notice saying po and opo. Always. It's part of how we talk. You just notice things when you talk with a person from a different culture. Another one is this. Two Australians talk with each other, and they use the word. By the way, I am using some offensive words in this because this is a language subject. They use the word cunt CUNT. And for them, for two Australian person, in context, it's okay. But if an Australian person uses that to American, they may fight because for the Americans, that word is or has a totally different meaning. Ayun. For them, it's like saying, for the Australians, saying that word might mean tol sa atin. Tol. Kung sana tol. Which is most of the times accepted, but not all of the times, di ba? Pag sinabi mo tol yung isang babae or isang tao na hindi mo ka-close, close ba kita? Tinotol mo ko? Ganun, di ba? But it's 99% okay with us. And it's the same with the what do you call this? The Australians. But if they say that to an American, it will mean differently. Parang minura mo na yung Amerikano pag ganun, di ba? Society is a way of talking about coded system of meaning and a set of belief, a heritage, and a way being that is transacted in communication. We transact using communication. And with that, it will create culture, right? Which is also an identifier of a society. I hate, ano, ingay ng aso. Okay lang kung yung tahol niya yung mababa, di ba? Ayoko dun sa aso yung pag tumatahol yung mataas, yung matinis ang boses. Ano yung sinasabi ko? Okay, a society is a way of talking about coded system. We have this coded system. We have coded responses to people, right? If a stranger talks to us and say, "Oy, tol, kamusta na?" You have a set of response to that. Diba? You are not going to reply, "Oy, okay lang, ikaw." No, you are going to look at that person suspiciously because that is the code that we have. Another thing is, if you're going to talk with your professors, let us say, by the way, na-notice ko to nung una eh. Ano yun? May gumamit ng word na professor noong in-address ako. I am not yet a professor, I am an instructor. Magkaibang bagay po yun. Ayan. So if you are talking with your professors or instructors, you also have a set of coded meanings and beliefs, right? Na that if you violate that, you are going to be punished for it. Ano ba yung P at F ko? Halimbawa, binastos mo yung isang tao, and that's away from the coded system that we have. For the morality that we have, diba? Binastos mo yung isang tao, then expect some retaliation for that. Ganon. Kasi, even though there is a negative thing about society, we still value justice, right? We still value positivity, we still value correctness, which a good thing is a lot of societies follow, except if you're North America. North Korea pala. Iba pala yung North America. May justice pa rin naman sa North America eh. But North Korea is a totally different thing. Iniintay ko yung time na bumagsak ang North Korea at mapalaya yung mga tao doon. If you have questions, of course, you can ask. At some point, this becomes complicated, and I totally understand that. Think of a culture as a system of norms, rules, rituals, beliefs. Any group with a system of shared meaning is a culture. So even friendship and romance could be a culture. So remember this. A person will not have culture. Okay? Culture is developed through interactions with two or more people. Especially more people. Maraming tao. The Filipinos in Manila are a collection of people, so normally they're going to have culture and norms. Norm basically is what is normal to us, right? So Even in friendship and romance can also have culture. You are with your friends, so you share a set of normal things with them, so you have culture too, right? So that's why you can differentiate. Kung bakit yung tropang yung tropang sunog baga, masasama talaga ugali. Tapos yung tropang sunog bahay, hindi. Kunwari lang yung mga pangalan. Wala kasi ako maisip. Because uh, it's a collection of people with a set of what is normal to them, right? Uh, 10 friends think that cheating is fun. That is culture to them, even though we think that is incorrect. Another group of people think that cheating is a bad thing. It's the worst thing that you can do. And you share that, and that is normal with you. So if one person from your group cheated, the natural response is to get angry. So even in friendship, we have culture. Even in romance, right? That's why we shun people who are cheaters, mga manloloko. Ibang Pinoy ibang Pinoy mag-react sa mga manloloko eh. Big deal sa atin yun, which is part of our culture. It's normal for us. If you hear a person cheating behind his girlfriend's back, then we are going to look at him with disdain, because that is what is normal to us. Even rituals. Churches have their rituals, right? Like the Catholic Church, which some denominations or religions do not have. So, if you attended another religion's gathering, you are going to be culture shocked to know that there is no ritual whatsoever. Ganon. Mapapansin nyo, wala ka pala, parang wala kayong mga ritual na ganyan, ano? Kasi nasanay ako ng meron eh. Nasanay. It's the norm for you. It's not the norm for me from another religion. And that is also under culture. Drivers and public transport operators in an organization, also athletes, members of business organizations could also be considered members of a unique cultures. Drivers Association, right, is a collection of people. So naturally, if it's a collection of people, culture will be developed. The same thing with businessmen. If a businessman gather in one place, there will also be culture in there. Or even though they do not physically gather, if they have connections with each other, then culture will also follow. Yung pala kahit mga businessman, no? So, saying that culture, basically ito kahit yung students and instructors, you are BM students, right? The BM students have their own cultures compared to the education students, and also compared to IT students and engineering students. Ayan. So do not expect that the way that you act will be the same as theirs, because they have similarities, they have their own norms, their own rituals. So they are going to be a somewhat, they are going to act somewhat differently than you. Ayan. Sa aming school, for example, anong oras na ba? May time pa. Sa aming school, sa CCT, kung saan ako gumawa. In EDUC, we have what we call the passing marks. Kailangan nandun ka. Maintaining grade. Ayun. Kailangan 2.25. Pag bumaba, yung iyong grade talaga, matatanggal ka sa EDUC. For the BSBA, o yung katumbas ng BM, they do not have that. So, sa kanila, okay lang na bumagsak. Pwede na lang sabihin na, okay lang. Tres yung nakuha ko dun sa grade ko nung huli. Anyways, ganun, no? Oh my goodness, nakatres ako dun sa exam. No, anyways, tara, inuman. Ganun. But for the EDUC, nakatres ako. So, as you can see, two different reaction to getting a 3 for a remark. for a mark in the card. Ayun. Why? It's dictated in their groups on norm, rituals, and the beliefs. Ganun. So kahit student pala at sa mga instructor, they have their own cultures. So saying that culture is simply identified as being Filipino, being Japanese, being Chinese, being Koreans is the start, but it's not the correct thing to say. Ayun. But it's the start. Viewing societies and cultures as unique meaning systems provide an opportunity to go beyond traditional structures, a structural view of culture. So, we still have this. In the Philippines, we have different societies, right? Because we have different communities. We have the book lover society, poet society. We have we have the although wala na ngayon, pero hindi ko alam kung nabubuhay uli, the emo culture. Ayan. The emo culture in the Philippines is quite unique compared to the American culture of emo. Especially way back when in 2002 to 2010, which is the golden age of emo. Mga bata pa siguro kayo talaga noon. Right? Nasaan ba kayo? Elementary? Ganun? Samantalang ako nagpapa one side ng buhok noon. Hindi na pwede ngayon. Yes. So if you think at it that way, if you think that a collection of people with the same thing can form culture, you are going to have a unique way of looking at culture. Not in a way that you look at it geographically. So hindi na pala lalampas na tayo doon sa geographical way of looking at cultures. Because we already know how it is structurally done. Ayun. So alam natin, it's a collection of people with the same idea, same belief, same values. They are going to be creating their own culture. Not only that, they can also coexist with another culture. We are going to have a more colorful way of looking at culture. Even though you are just in the Philippines. Ganun. Last na lang to. Just to identify societies and cultures with races, nationalities, regions, religion, ethnicity is a mistake. Ayun. So, wag na yung Japanese to. So, he has his own culture. Tapos magugulat ka, hindi niya ginagawa. Right? O Filipino ka, ba't di ka nagpo-point opo? It's incorrect, right? Without knowing that the person is Visayan. So, nasanay siya nang walang point opo. Right? So, looking at it with ethnicity, with the religion, with the region, with the race is a mistake. Because even in a region, let us say the Visayan region, there are also a lot of societies and cultures within that said region. Para bang one of my classmates in college is a Visaya, but she is from Bohol. And she said that the Visaya used in Bohol is somewhat different from the ones used in Cebu. Ayun. So, ang ginawa ko, nag-generalize ako. Which she corrected in the process. Di ba ano ka? Bisaya ka? So, naintindihan mo sinaganto from Cebu? And then she said, iba naman ang gamit na Bisaya doon eh. Ayun. So, using races, nation, region, religion, and ethnicity to identify culture is incorrect. Ayun. We must still be able to dissect what makes it different from each other too. Ganun. So, pag sinabi nyo, at Pilipino ka, so nagpo-point opo ka, is incorrect, right? Ayun. So, next time we are going to discuss dimensions of culture, which only has 2. Sir, for ang nakikita ko, 2 lang talaga. Ayun. We are going to discuss this the next time. Let me just press escape. And any questions regarding the lesson for today? Baka may natural lang na may hindi magets because that's how it is. To expect my student to understand the lesson completely is a mistake mostly done by instructors. So I am assuming that hindi na ako mag-a-assume. I know that some of you do not understand something. Pakiusap, magtanong naman. Pero hindi ko maramdaman na ako nag-iisa. By the way, for the ones who are going to view this video, I'm going to end the recording.